Happy Sabbath, everyone. Welcome to our Sabbath school class. So today we're a little bit short on time. Review went a little bit long, so we have about half the time as usual, so just be mindful of that when answering. Let's try to stick to the main points and principles today. So we're studying a lesson entitled An Appeal to Church Leaders. And I know for some, this might, if you're not a church leader, this might kind of just turn your ears off. Oh, it doesn't matter to me, I'm not a church leader. But what I learned studying this lesson is that all these principles can apply to each and every one of us. Yes, exactly. Although they're definitely very important for church leaders, we can all find application. So let's go together to Sunday, an experience each leader needs. When did the Apostle Peter become a true pastor, ready to care for the souls of others? Yes, Daddy?
Yes, when he fell, when cock crawled third time, and when he met Jesus' eyes with passion and caring for him and love, and that's where he was broken, and he went out and bitterly cried, and that's what we need to become. We have to be broken on the rock, that we could have that power what Peter had later on. Through Jesus Christ, not on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. It's when Peter had that moment when he realized his own weakness, when he needed to, he realized he needed to rely completely on Christ and not on his own strength. We'll just move to question B. Likewise, what experience must every pastor and church leader have today? Brother Dorian?
So here is Broadway experience of Nicodemus when he came by night to Jesus and he asked, "What shall I do?" And Jesus told him, you need to be converted, you need to be born again. So for every leader in the church, we need to have the same experience. We need to be converted. We need that rebirth, that experience with Jesus. And I like the two parts of the note. It says, the converting power of God must come upon the hearts of the ministers, or they should seek some other calling. Unless the ministers are converted men, the churches will be sickly and ready to die. So this is a very serious matter. So it's a matter of death and life, I would say, because if you have unconverted, people that are not having a connection with Jesus, then the the connection and the message and everything that comes, it's also very fragile. And then you get results, what you get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there's one interesting point that I thought of for this kind of section, because it says that we need to have this conversion experience. And oftentimes when people think about conversion, they think of these very stark stories where you start going down one really dark path and you end up doing all kinds of the worst things you can think of, and then you have this transformation experience. So is this something that church leaders and all of us should have to go through? Should we have to go to the darkest places that we can find in order to have this conversion experience? I would say no. I mean, I've heard some people who thought that they would be better at giving pastoral care and whatever if they have had those experiences themselves. If they got into drinking and smoking and they know what it's like, then they thought maybe I can help these people more. And what I heard one person giving their testimony, that didn't end up going very well, and they ended up, it was really hard for them to come back. So, but we also need to keep in mind, so we don't need to go to those extremes in order to be converted, but it's this daily experience, this daily battle against self. We're all fighting against self every day. The sin that is within us trying to bring itself out, we need to keep it down. Yes, Brother Orla.
For what you just said, you got to remember King Solomon, he gave himself into all those vices, all those vices. And it didn't end well with him. But thank God he repented at the end, and we have a very good book, 2 books written by him. And
yeah, that's a good example. Thank you, Brother Orla. So we'll move on to Monday, exhorting with authority. What must be considered by the church before calling a person to service, and by the individual before accepting the call? Brother Dorian?
Usually the church looks, or people tend to look at someone if he is a good speaker, how he is manifesting in public.
Mm.
And we can downsize and say that this is not important. But I would say that this can be developed. Something more important is to look at the character, at qualifications.
Mhm.
If this person is temperate, if this person is balanced, if the person can have self-control and many other qualifications that are necessary for a leader, for a pastor or a shepherd, under shepherd.
Mm.
So I would say that this is even more important looking at these characteristics because, and it has to be a calling. It says, first of all, you need to have that calling from God. If there is not that calling, it's kind of like in vain to force it, By force, it doesn't come anything good. So I would say that these are the main qualifications we should focus on.
Yes, thank you, Brother Dorian. Yeah, it's interesting because it talks a lot about the different qualifications that are necessary in the note. And I heard this quote once that goes that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And so kind of the principle behind that is you don't need to be perfect and have everything really down to the T and be the most amazing speaker and all these other things in order for God to use you. We can see so many examples in the Bible of God using very simple people, very humble people. And what he really needs is our hearts, that we're really converted, and then he can work with us. That's really all he needs. And so yes, as Brother Dorian mentioned, if we're being called to ministry, we have to personally feel that calling on our lives. And if we have received Christ into our hearts, there should be some manifestation of showing that transformation has taken place in us. Did you want to add something, Brother Weaver?
Yeah, I just want to quickly just add to what Brother Dorian had said.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be apparent in the life that a person is kind and self-controlled, and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people, they judge people by their outward appearance, but we have to use divine wisdom to see the heart.
Mm.
And not everybody's qualified to be in the pulpit. A lot of people think they are,
Mm.
but not everybody have that self-control, be able to discern sin or rebuke sin in love. That is a very hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. So moving to question B, of what danger did Peter warn those laboring in the Lord's vineyard? So what's the danger that we're warned against when we're working for God? Yes, Brother Larry?
Talks about not to be grasping for filthy lucre, in other words, for high wages. One might think that he's very well qualified or educated,
Mm.
and he deserves way more than average Bible worker or whatever. It's not like that. We should be humble and be happy what is allotted to us, allowed by the conference. And talks about account must be given for every dollar expended. God's means is to be used at the proper times and in the right place. In other words, be economically minded, like Hazel McCallion and other municipalities of Toronto with that $300 million. Guess what she did?
What?
She managed to have surplus money of $300 million to $50 million.
Wow.
That's wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom, like similar to my wife and many others. Brother Bear, for instance, he was very economical.
Mm.
He said he never had a loan of $1 single he paid with his own pocket.
Mm.
And the property, the acreage, and shared the acreage with the Postal Church. And
Mm-hmm.
encouraged others to do likewise. This is mind of Christ. We should be economical, diligent, industrious, and adaptable to circumstances like apostles. Very important. Humble in our own estimation. When God said to Saul, you were according to my heart when you, on the right path when you were a little in your own eyes, right? Humility is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. So I think this is definitely something that applies to all of us, that we know that everything that's given to us, it actually belongs to God. It's not our own. And so we need to be taking our best care of it, not using it just for our own selfish pleasure, but in order to glorify God and further his cause. Brother Jim?
Feeding the flock is much more than just giving a sermon.
Mm.
It goes way beyond that. The flock needs instructions, needs correction, helping those who are in error. And there's sympathy as well as empathy. Putting yourself in their shoes to see what they're going through, then you'll understand how to deal with them, because we don't want to be a stumbling block to anybody. We want to be able to, again, uplift and encourage and go in the right lane. And so we must understand that we are dealing with souls that are precious to the Lord, and we don't want to do anything to harm, be in harm's way in destroying anybody that is needing help with.
Yes, thank you, Brother Jim. So moving to question C. Although working for the Lord is not a high-paying career, what considerations should be made by the church? Brother Owen?
I'd like to read what Apostle Paul says here in First Timothy 5:17. Let the elders that rule will well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. So what caught my attention are two words here: rule well and double honor. What does that mean? You know, there was a tendency for some time, you know, well, if someone is in the ministry, you would minimize, you would cut, you know, you would try to. This is not the right approach. And Sister White actually says that every worker in our institutions should receive their compensation. She also warns, because in some institutions, because they had more money, someone was compensated more. And she warned about that. She says we should be careful, you know, especially. But what Apostle Paul says here is very important. When you see a progress, you know, sometimes people say, oh, this ministry is not doing well. So if it's not doing well, there is a question why it's not doing well, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and if something is going well, we should support and we should analyze if something is not going well. So I think this is critical and we should pay attention to this.
Yeah. Thank you. Good point, Brother Dorian. So if there's no other points, we'll move to Tuesday, a humbler attitude needed. June 18th. What is the main cause of problems among brethren in positions of weighty responsibility? Brother Rob?
Some they think that they have preeminence over everybody, and also not to be the Lord's over God's heritage, but be example to the flock. Yeah, not to lord it over other people, but to be an example to the flock.
Yes.
So there's a problem of lording it, and to be, you think that you're special because you're a teacher or. You know.
Yeah, that's such a huge problem for us as humans, because we we don't know how to deal well with when we're given more responsibility and more honor and praise. We're not created to receive glory and praise. Only God is the one that's supposed to receive it. So when we start getting that, it starts getting to our head, and we kind of forget our place, and we forget that everything actually comes from God. Brother Orville?
I just want to read this scripture, 3 John 1:9. I wrote out to the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. So here's a brother not receiving Paul, who probably planted the church, or John in this case. But my main point is, throughout history, churches have broken off because somebody, you know, felt that he wasn't honored as he should be. And they went and formed another church. And hence we have 40,000 plus Christian churches today.
Yeah.
And there's one main one in the Philippines, Iglesia Cristo, I think it's called.
Okay.
Beautiful churches, beautiful buildings, and a huge fellowship. But I'm told that the head, the founder, used to be an Adventist, right? So I don't know why he left, but for some reason he left, and he founded his own church.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so this is something we need to be aware of, this desire for power and superiority that we can all have, especially as we're given more responsibility. Question B is, what appeal is given to all local church leaders and elders, which, if followed, will prevent pride and a spirit of self-importance among brethren in higher positions? So now we have the problem. What's the solution? What can we do to help this problem? Brother Larry?
Talks about feeding the flock of God, not with constraint, not for filthy lucre or high wages, taking the oversight thereof, in other words, controlling the situation, encouraging, even visiting the homes, and of course by appointment nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works. Talks about hospitality, talks about, talks about suing. It used to be in the past. Brethren were suing one another. It's not biblical. We should not sue. Take to court for justice one another. Because we're putting the church affairs to open shame to the worldlings that are laughing at us.
Mm-hmm.
We should be very careful with that. It talks about don't in other censors judge the world. If the world shall be judged by you, are you not able and qualified to judge the small matters?
Mm.
We should resolve things in a brotherly love, in the spirit of prayer and humility.
Yes, thank you.
Whether it's financial, conflict, or any other conflict.
Mm-hmm. Brother Dorian?
Yeah, very briefly. Also, it says here that for the church leaders, as elders, as ministers, they should be very careful in what direction they take the minds of their parishioners, of the members, because many times this is done in a way to attract people to themselves. To build kind of like a name, a fame, something. It's around one person.
Mm-hmm.
So the individual thinks if he doesn't show up or if he is not in the center of attention, everything will collapse. And this is wrong. In many churches, this happens. And actually, the warning comes and it says, because of this damage which was done around some individuals, problems have been created. And thousands of dollars, and not just money, but time and energy is wasted away when you have to travel in different places, go and solve problems. Stay until late evening to solve problems, committee meetings and stuff. Why? Because there is not proper guidance, not proper education of the members.
Yes, thank you. That's very important. I think definitely for those in leadership positions, it's important to not train people to rely on you and always turn to you for help and guidance and counsel, but to lead them to Christ. I think that's should be all of our goals, to help lead other people to Christ, not just to us. We don't have all the answers. We won't always know, but if we can lead them to the Bible, lead them to God, He can always help them. So moving to C, what would enable less workers to gain greater insight for success? And give an example when a lack of this caused failure. Yes, Daddy?
Yeah, the less experienced workers, they could learn a lot from more experienced workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people who we trust, they shaping our life, our character, so that is important that we consider. Like the main thing of everything is Jesus Christ. We all have to follow His example, but some people they are closer, some they are farther. So we have to take example of those who are closer. And for us to know who is closer, we have to know Jesus Christ, because if we don't know Jesus Christ, we don't know who is closer to Him, right? So we all have to study for ourselves, but example of more experience could influence us to be closer to the Lord.
Yes, thank you. And we're given the example here of King Rehoboam, which was Solomon's son, David's grandson, and he had an important decision to make, and he decided to go to his own friends, to his own people that were close to him, to the young people, rather than going to the more experienced people who had more wisdom and knew more. And what happened? What was the result? Exactly, the whole kingdom of Israel split into two. So that's really serious example and warning for us, that we can learn a lot from each other. We all have different experiences, and those who have had more experiences, they have more knowledge that they can share. So, Brother Jim, just briefly.
Youth is the heritage of our church. Why do I say that? It's because we give them the opportunity to take responsibilities, to learn by experience, not just only by word and listening, but by experience. You cannot learn anything until you go out and do it yourself. And this is what we had. Our missionary endeavor is our Sabbath school program here. We all learn together, both young and old, so that we all take responsibilities equally together.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Jim. We'll just have to move on to the next section. We're running out of time. Wednesday, Peter's example of humility. How do we know that a one-time genuine conversion or experience with the Lord is not enough for a pastor or for any believer? How do we know that once saved, always saved isn't good enough? Brother Dorian.
It's not good because the knowledge of salvation is progressing, or sanctification, what we call. And here is rather example of Peter, right? So Peter has fallen on the rock, and he has repented after he denied 3 times Jesus. But then what happens? It tells us in the book of Acts that he went and he ate with the Gentiles, and then he came back to his brethren and he said he didn't. So did Peter sin? Absolutely. And he was rebuked. We'll see, Apostle Paul had to confront him, the one who was younger in faith than him, but he had the courage to confront one of the disciples of Jesus.
Yes.
And at the same time, this tells us that even someone that is very advanced or very mature or experienced, they can fall as well. There is not that security, as you said. Once saved, you're kind of like you have a warranty there, so you will never fall. So that's why the previous question, I think it's connected, because if you rely on a human being, on a person, and not on Jesus, then you will get disappointed, because human beings, they fail.
Yeah.
They have deficiencies. I have deficiencies, right? So I think this is the lesson, and one of the clearest examples is Apostle Peter.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Dorian. So moving to question B. When an error or the behavior of a minister, Bible worker, or church leader brings open bitterness or confusion into the church, how are they to be rebuked? Brother.
Talks about 1 Timothy 5:19 to 20. against the elder, receive not the accusation, but before 2 to 3 witnesses. And them the sin rebuke, before that others may fear. Do nothing with partiality, preferring one over another. That's a very delicate situation here. We all can fall into that trap, partiality, preferring one over to another. You don't put repeatedly the same people for review or new lessons over and over and over zillion times, and then put others in the back burner as a spare tire when there's nobody else. We should check ourselves and do the right thing, and the Lord will bless us.
Thank you. Yes, so, and also, just to add, it's talking about when there's open bitterness or confusion in the church caused by some mistake on a leader's part. And like was mentioned, this is a very delicate situation. And the problem is that everybody already knows about it. Everybody's talking about it, everybody's gossiping and whatever. They all have their own opinions and ideas. So it can't be dealt with privately, because then there's also going to be things going on about how it was dealt with and whatever. It needs to be just brought into the open. There needs to be clear, sorry? Yeah, there needs to be a clear understanding between everybody about what the problem was and what the mistake was, and that it needs to be reprimanded. Otherwise, it will just go on forever, and there won't really be a solution.
It talks about mutual submission. I don't know if it talks about that yet. Be all subject one to another. In other words, learn from the experience of brethren. Where there are 70 years in the church, or 7 years, doesn't matter. We all learn as we go. We should have enough respect to learn from each other.
Yep.
Be as humble for the Lord, resist the proud, and give it grace to the humble.
Yes, thank you. And that's leading into the next question. What should be the attitude of a converted leader when publicly rebuked? Brother Rob.
You got to be clothed with humility and humbleness, and confess your hearts, your faults one to another, that you may be healed.
Thank you. Brother Wardle.
Read the notes. Paul, who saw the subverting influence of the wrong done to the church through the double part acted by Peter. So Peter was two-faced, basically, and a hypocrite, openly rebuked him for thus disguising his true sentiments in the presence of the church. Paul was bold enough to rebuke Peter, his elder in the faith, basically. And, when a leader accepts rebuke graciously and meekly, that's a blessing for him. We are watching, and we watch our leaders, and you will hold that leader in higher esteem.
Yes, thank you. I think this is definitely one of the things that's easier said than done. I can't imagine being in this situation where you're a leader of a church of all things, and then you made a mistake and you're called before everybody and told what you did before everybody. Like, that would be really hard. You really need a lot of humility that would only come from God. Because otherwise our natural pride is coming to defend ourselves and to not be so humiliated. So really, we can only do this with the grace of God. So moving to our last section, encouragement for weary workers. What is often a cause of discouragement in the life of a gospel worker? Brother Dorn?
The problem, as I see, we have too many sensitive people. I might be very sensitive, but in this line of work, there is no room for, often we complain. I see the negative. I see the burden is too heavy. Once I entered into this line of work, the note states very well that I should be ready to carry this load as a true soldier of Christ. When you think about a soldier in a military, how much load they carry, with the gun and all of the armor. And Paul is talking about the first century soldier, a Roman military, and everything was made of iron, right? So he is saying, like in a spiritual sense, there is a burden, there is a heavy load. So many times a worker has to take this, and I like how it is put here in the note. They should be willing to go without the camp and suffer reproach and bear burdens as good soldiers of Christ. So what does it mean to go out of the camp? It means that you will get in situations when you will be stoned, not literally maybe, with words. So if you let your emotions and feelings prevail, where do you go? Well, you might have a situation when you need the church leaders to deal with a situation defending or covering or accusing another church leader because the emotions prevailed here. So you need maturity, you need people that will leave that aside, and overall we can call this what? Pride, because many times it's just pride. But if you leave it on the side, then the Spirit of Christ will dominate.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Dorian. Yes, Brother Jim?
It's not a 9 to 5 job. It's 24/7. You are called in unusual hours for emergencies. Somebody got sick. You have to travel to another city in a moment's notice because somebody had passed away, and then you have to take care of the bereaved family and so forth. All these things are heavy burdens upon the worker for God. And in this, we must understand that even though we can be tired in the work that we do, still it can be something that I'm working for souls. And I'm willing to sacrifice. Christ sacrificed for us, and he gave us all that he had for our salvation. We are to do the same thing. We are to give all to others who need help in times of emergencies and health and death and everything else. So if somebody's in trouble, do I grudgingly go because I'm tired? No, I go because I know what is required of me. In tough times or in good times, this is the work of all of us, to to strive for the cause of glory in everything that we do, whether it's in good times or bad times. We are to do in spite with a cheerful and not a grudgingly spirit, but a cheerful spirit to go for, and we'll be blessed in the trials that we face.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Jim. Brother Larry?
Yeah, in short, I want to mention two champions of truth, Brother Dimitrievich and Brother Bear. They were carrying their first aid kit, they're carrying toolbox, plain clothes, for working clothes. This is what Ellen G. White prescribes for evangelists, even for ministers, to be ready to be general handyman. Brother Bear used to say, how can I preach the gospel to a widow who has a leaking roof and there's downpour, and she has to put a big pail there to collect the rainwater?
Yeah.
What I do, I go in the barn and grab the ladder, climb up there and fix the shingles. If there's no shingles, put some plywood or anything, just to prevent leaking and put the caulking after. So he was ready for anything, so did Brother Dimitrievich in Philippines. He was very much respected in the Philippines because he went extra mile. He was training them healthy vegetarian cooking. He was training them homemade remedies. He was clothing those that were naked, like Christ said, to be done. And as a result, he told me personally before he died in Australia, I was instrumental in helping with a group of other Filipino leaders to open 40 churches and groups.
Wow.
So that's quite an extra achievement. And not to give glory to any man, we should put into dust. However, we should give some credit and, and follow those examples like Christ did. They follow Christ, we should follow them as they follow Christ. Put it this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you. That's great examples of following Christ's method of meeting people's needs. And exactly. So question B, our final question. When Satan tries to discourage any of us by pointing to problems in the church, to what promise should we cling? Yes, Tony.
See, we hear that Satan has people who follow him, and he doesn't need to work on them much because they're on his side, right? So he works on the people who are on Lord's side because those are his enemies. But he puts special effort to work on ministers or elders and their families. He's pushing special effort because if he could put them off the track, he could mess it up all group, all church. So it is important that we understand that. And here it's saying nicely in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 6 and 7. It said, humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cared for you. So that's the solution for everything, to cast our worries and problems and on our Lord, and he will help us, but we have to trust him and obey him.
Amen. Brother Rob.
Also, we can't forget that we'll receive a crown of glory that faded not away. So that's what the promise we have to look at for.
Thank you. So in closing, a lot of things we learned. I think for this question, it's a big thing because it's so easy to look at the problems at of the church and then make an excuse to not go to church and to even leave God because of the people. But I think we need to have that realization that the church isn't perfect. The people aren't perfect. There's going to be mistakes even by the leaders. And it's all a learning experience for all of us. And we need to remember that Jesus is the true shepherd of his church and of his people. And we can know that he takes care of them. He cares for us. He sees all our problems, and we can always turn to him, and he will be our guide. Amen.